What are other inmates' attitudes towards you claiming your innocence while locked up? Ricky here. I think most inmates don't really care, but since they are mostly guilty, they probably assume everybody else is. As for me, most people knew my case from news media and gave me a favorable response and showed support, especially when I was being released. Sean here. There are people who are bitter about being locked up, and there are others who see potential exonerations as opportunities to snitch to get a deal so they can get out. We did have that problem in Ricky's case, and every other case where the inmates see media that indicates a fellow prisoner is about to go free. It adds to the burden of the work. What do you think of all the changes that have occurred for the past 22 years, i.e. technology, cars, fashion, architecture, etc.? Had a guy that did 16 years I became friends with after he got out, and it was an adjustment for him for sure. Had to help him reintegrate back into society. I'm just curious how others see it as well. Ricky, I love GPS. I love hotel key cards. I love self-checkout at the store. I love Apple products. I love Uber and Lyft. So I have no complaints. My comprehension is pretty strong, so I haven't done bad in these areas. But for where I do fall short, my youngest daughter often comes to the rescue. Can you shed any light on how things as obvious as a rock-solid alibi and knowledge of the crime didn't matter through the trial process? Sean, one of the problems with an overworked public defender is that your case goes to the bottom of the pile, and it doesn't get seriously worked up until a week or two before trial. So alibi witnesses get the same cross-examination by the prosecutor. When were you first contacted about this case? 2 weeks ago. So in March of 1997, you expect us to believe that you remember where you were and who you were with on February 6, 1997? It's the truth. So where were you on February 5, 1996? I don't remember. Where were you on February 6, 1996? I don't remember. Ricky got desperate and started calling his own alibi witnesses from the jail. That cross-examination goes like this: who first contacted you about this alibi? Ricky. So the defendant asked you to say he was with you? Yes. There is no good way to answer these questions. Possible video surveillance evidence was lost. Memories were not as trustworthy. Fresh investigation is essential for a credible alibi defense. With an overburdened public defender system, Missouri prosecutions are alibi-proof. What was the first meal you ate when released? Ricky, steak. Filet mignon. Fries, onion rings and a cold one at Fiorello's Jack Stack Barbecue with 30 friends and family, and they comped the whole tab. How did this experience affect your philosophy of life? Asterisk, did it affect you religiously? If so, how? Asterisk, did you find a way to make prison meaningful? If so, how? Ricky, my wrongful conviction did impact me religiously. I grew in my faith and had to become anchored in something or I would have blew away. God was and continue to be my anchor. As for did I find a way to make prison meaningful? Sure. I began living outside of myself. I focused on living vicariously through others. I created prison programs, I trained dogs, I wrote books and plays and movie scripts. I studied the issues of injustice and now I'm putting all that into play. Why is the appeal process so lengthy? I've seen quite a few cases that the person was clearly innocent but it still took like 10 years or more to get the person out of prison, like in your situation. I'm so sorry you had to go through all of that. Do you think the appeal process will improve? Sean, I teach a 3-credit-hour advanced law school course in post-conviction remedies that still doesn't come close to answering this question. In a nutshell, procedural technicalities. You hear about criminals getting off on technicalities, that is rare. What is more common is that prisoners lose appeals because they have inadequate public defenders, the procedures are complex, and it takes money to hire the lawyers and acquire the resources to get justice. The appeals process has 10 steps, but you only get an appointed lawyer on the first 2 steps, and if a mistake is made at any step in the way, it creates a hurdle that prevents you from moving forward to the next. The Supreme Court studied the problem in 1989, and the report said the main cause of delays in the justice system is lack of access to competent counsel. Hey Ricky. Did knowing that you're imprisoned for something you didn't do help or hurt you in coping with the situation? Was it something to hold on to, or did it make things feel worse because of how unfair it is? Ricky, both. On one hand, it was agonizing to know that an innocent person is in a place built for the guilty. On the other hand, I was not guilty, and so I never behaved or acted as such. Nor did I ever give in, as I suspect most guilty people probably do after they're caught. I imagine they exhale, thinking in their mind, okay, I'm caught, I can rest now. But for me, it was, okay, I'm innocent, there's no time to rest now. I must live to see another day and hope for the day where I can live again, free. Would you say the moral of this story is pay for a lawyer even if you can't afford it at the time? This is awful, I'm sorry this happened to you. Sean, most Americans will tell you justice costs money. A solid defense on a case this serious would be well beyond the reach of most middle-class Americans. I keep track of my time and expenses in exoneration efforts, and if I were billing my client for my time, my typical fee would be upwards of $500,000. A homicide defense will run you well into 6 figures. This is why public defender funding is so important. It's like being diagnosed with cancer, your life will depend on the cure, but it doesn't come cheap. What were some things about prison life that surprised you? What was something that you never got used to? Ricky, one of the things that surprised me about prison is the callous environment, where humanity is stripped away and everybody seems to give it permission. Often I felt like I was of a small circle who still had, rather held onto my humanity. One of the things I have fully embraced since I've been home is a world where humanity is okay again. As for what I never got used to, and what I hope to one day forget, is the dehumanizing aspect of prison, the times when we're strip-searched, forced to bend over, cough, and squat, and if they didn't like that you didn't bend over far enough or cough hard enough, they make you do it again. Anything ever happened to the guy you said you knew committed the crime? What's the statute of limitations in Missouri? Sean, neighbors saw 3 people flee the murder scene. Ricky was tried together with Marcus Merrill, who was also convicted. Merrill confessed to a federal judge in open court that he committed the crime with 2 other men, a father and a son, and that Ricky was never involved. The father passed away a few years ago. The son is living in the Kansas City area. The prosecutor knows who he is, and we have offered the prosecutor our cooperation. There is no statute of limitations on murder in Missouri. If you could change one thing about the justice system, what would it be? Sean, put prosecutor and public defender salaries and caseloads on parity so that funding and resources are equitable. Fairness requires a level playing field. That's the top of my long list. Ricky, I would allow innocence to trump any legal impediments or procedural technicalities that often prevent or delay exonerations. Ricky, I'm so sorry this happened to you. What a horrible situation you've been put in, simply because you couldn't afford proper representation. Before going to prison, what did you want to be when you grew up? What helped you through your time in prison, knowing your innocence. How are you today? Resentful, determined, angry. Finally, I wish you all the success in the world. I cannot imagine what you've been through, and I am hopeful for the future when this work pays off and nobody ever has to live what you lived through, again. Ricky, when I was little I wanted to be a chef. But as I got older, I just wanted to be loved. So, I sold drugs because money brought me things, and things brought me adoration and fake love. When I went to prison, I had to re-examine myself. I took a picture of when I was 3 and asked him, "What do you want to be? What do you want me to do for you?" The answer has shown in my growth and development as well as some of the work that I now do. As for what helped me while in prison, I would have to say knowing that I didn't want my legacy to live and die inside barbed wire and concrete and steel. Today, I am well. I'm free. I feel alive. And most certainly determined to spend the rest of my life making a difference in others. Thank you for your good wishes and thoughtful questions. Do you think the time you spent in prison made you a worse person? Sean, I know Ricky's perspective. He would be the first to tell you his life was headed in the wrong direction. I've watched him grow personally and spiritually over the 14 years I have known him. This is not uncommon with innocent clients. They come to prison angry and frustrated, and often you see their conduct record full of write-ups for mouthing off to guards and other prisoners. Eventually they must let go of their anger just to survive, and they are some of the most calm and peaceful people I know. So after a year or two they have exemplary conduct records, and even the prison staff come to believe